National Parents Union. I hope that you're all well. I hope that you're all thriving. As always, we have wonderful guests that speak to relevant information, on-time information that we provide to you. But before we bring out our guest for today, I wanted to just talk about celebrating those small victories. And, you know, I've been repeating myself about this, just having that, you know, mindset that even I'm going to just celebrate those little steps and victories along the way. And so today I have the proud announcement that I have reached 330,000 steps. I walked 330,000 steps, which I'm excited about, you know, and the thing about that is that at first I didn't know if I was going to make the marker and how long it was going to take. And I was paying attention, like, when am I going to get to 110,000 steps? When am I going to get to, you know, 200,000? And so I got to 330,000 and I noticed these little percentages underneath, and it showed that I was improving over time. And so what I thought about was, you know what, just keep walking, you know, just keep walking, just keep showing up, just keep on being an active participant. And you know what, even those little mistakes along the way, you will get better over time. So that's my message to you guys, and I hope that it inspires you. It's my small victory. Celebrate those small victories. And now we're gonna go into our segment, and I have an amazing guest. His name is Ben Austin. Hello, Ben. Hi.
Hold on.
How are you? You gotta unmute.
Unmute.
Yes.
Hello.
Hey.
Congratulations on your steps. Like, it sounds like you're adopting a growth mindset, which is what we tell our children and students to adopt.
Right. And it comes with celebrating those little milestones. And then when you look at it, and it's all charted out, because I was looking at that whole thing and I'm like, wow, I did all of these steps. And you know what? It started out that I was like 50% better than most users, because it's kind of competitive in that way. And then when I got to the 330,000 mark, I was 86% better than most walkers.
You go, girl. Well
Yes,
done.
that's what I'm talking about. I love that peace sign too, you know.
There you go. Yeah.
So can you tell everyone that's watching who you are and what you do?
My name is Ben. I'm a public school dad. I have one daughter in live in Los Angeles, our local LAUSD neighborhood elementary school, and then one daughter in a really great charter school. And I work on trying to unrig the public education system for kids. Frankly, especially kids who don't look like my daughters and don't have their privileges. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that advocates, badass advocates like you who have been, you know, kind of fighting the good fight for kids for a long time. I mean, I think it's like we're all going to Vegas trying to win against the house. And, you know, every once in a while when we can win a victory for kids, you know, you can have a fun weekend in Vegas too. but at the end of the day, it all kind of, you know, it all balances out, not in favor of kids, because kids don't have power, and parents, you know, despite, you know, the really awesome efforts of the National Parents Union, parents don't have the same kind of power that, you know, the defenders of the status quo have.
That is so true. And, you know, I was watching the news, and I always I try to avoid watching the news. I really do, you guys, just because there's this side and then there's that side and then there's just a war in between. And I'm just like, okay, let me just read, right? But I happened to catch CNN, and there was a young lady, and I'm going to share this photo. And, you know, she's a high school student, shows up to school reopening, and is frightened by what she saw. And so she takes a picture, right? And, you know, I mean, I'm going to share it. So, she takes this picture and is saying, look, this is not okay, right? I don't want to be here. And it went viral. And then she gets suspended. And I'm thinking, you get suspended for telling the truth when you're a student? Like, this is a cry for help. This is not a moment where we kick kids or throw them under the bus, right? Again, you could see how crowded that was. And I, as a teacher or a parent, volunteer, or something like that, would not be walking in the middle of that hallway, nor would I want my child in that type of situation when there's just so many unknowns and we're still battling this pandemic, right? So right now is a prime opportunity for us as parents, parent advocates, to really start shifting our mentality around the way that we think of education and how to best educate our children. We know that that's not it. We know that her getting suspended for telling the truth is the way that systems operate against us as parents, against our children, to get punished for doing the right thing, right? She's not the only one.
Right. I mean, it's that picture is it's kind of exhibit A for the point you're making, Christina, that parents and students are very much on the outside looking in when it comes to education policy making that affects their future and even their health in moments like this. And so I know the work that you've been leading with the National Parents Union and other parent leaders across the country has been focused really more around power than policy, around ensuring that parents have an authentic seat at the table to advocate for the interests of students. I mean, we can pass all of the nice policies with fancy names, but if parents are still on the outside looking in when it comes to decisions like this, we're going to keep getting the same results. And I think that as horrible and frightening and existentially disturbing, I mean, I haven't slept for, I can't remember the last time, as this moment is, it is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for advocates like, the advocates who are working with National Parents Union to stand up and to stand together and to speak with one voice that, we need to build a better world out of the dumpster fire of the status quo. And as important as it is to organize around ending police violence, I used to be a deputy mayor in Los Angeles and did plenty of battles with the police union. They are very much on the wrong side of social justice and equity, but frankly, so are the teachers union, and so are other defenders of the status quo. And this is a moment when I think regular voters, transactional politicians are waking up to the fact that the status quo is not just rigged against kids, but fundamentally racist. Where my daughters have a right to a high quality public education, I would not tolerate anything less. And low income children of color are left to really pick up the scraps, get an adequate education if they're lucky. And ending police violence is necessary to meet this moment, but it is far from sufficient. And creating a real seat at the table for parents to advocate for educational equity, to advocate for low-income children of color to receive the same type of education that privileged children take for granted. The status quo is off balance. There is an opening, and I think that sort of regular political operatives and observers who don't kind of live and breathe this accept the premise now in a way they didn't even just a few months ago, that the status quo isn't just broken or problematic, but fundamentally racist and inequitable and rigged in a way that if we don't
I'm
seize
back.
this moment, we're all
Something
kind of
fell.
screwed.
I'm sorry. I had to,
Yeah, more
the
than something has
pandemic
fallen.
moment where I'm
Exactly.
on my show and I disappear, right?
Here, there. We can
Now
both
we're,
disappear.
you gotta just, laugh. And I keep having Nemo in my mind, like, just keep swimming, it's crazy. But you're so right. Like, I have been supporting parents who had really been showing up to advocate. I mean, they had California Ed Code, they had, what is going on with ESSA at the time,
Yeah.
or ESEA, Title I rules, you name it. And they were still opposed. And then I started saying, look, if the 1964 and 1866 Civil Rights Act still have not produced what we would consider as fruitful, then these are just pretty words on pages. And we have to really consider shifting our behavior from thinking that the system is going to do what it says on the books that they're going to do, right? It's just policy can sometimes become pretty words on pages when you have no authority or power to make anything happen. And so the parents were really trying to do the best that they could for their children. But what I started to determine was you have to couple that with some kind of economic threat. And if your children are no longer subscribed or enrolled in that system that you're battling, guess what? That's an economic threat. Because now there's a word of mouth, and that can become viral. This, hey, we can get quality education over here. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then you have this exodus, but the unions fight back, right? To trap our kids into systemic failure, systemic oppression, and institutionalized racism, which you're talking about, through educational platforms, and they block our options.
Yeah. Yes, exclamation point. Try to imagine a world where, teachers unions or other powerful special interests on, all sides of the political spectrum, try to imagine a moment where they would accept, an advisory seat at the table, where it would be fine with them if the main way they exercise power is speaking in public comment while school board members are texting. Ask them if it would be just totally hunky-dory to be on a committee that may have a fancy name but has no power of any kind. None of them would accept that, but it is what they tell parents and students to accept every single day, despite the fact that, at least in theory, the purpose of public education is to serve parents and students. So the moment the times of accepting the scraps that fall from the table after the powerful people have met and made their decisions about what we're going to do, that time has got to come and pass. Otherwise, we're going to descend into a pretty dark moment. I used to be on the California State Board of Education, which is sort of like the school board for the state of California. And I kind of naively on my first day announced that, that I'm not a policy expert per se, but I'm a dad, and that I was just going to try to cast every vote as if it affected my daughters. And what that led to was a series of votes that pretty much pissed everybody off that mattered in the equation of keeping my job. There was a line of lobbyists in the front row of every meeting tracking everything I did. And, it wasn't like anybody was lobbying me to vote against kids. And sometimes transactional interest groups would would align with the interests of kids, or at least what I viewed as the interests of kids. But I felt no consistent political pressure to always vote for kids, especially children of color. And you know, after about a year, I got kicked off the state board of education and replaced by the chief lobbyist for CTA. And I say that not because, you know, my being on the state board of education would, you know, make that much of a difference. I say that because that's how the system works. And that's how the system incentivizes people with power to keep their jobs. That if you want to stay in a situation like that, if you want to keep a powerful position, you've either got to play ball or you're going to get removed. The system kind of has antibodies. And I know, Christina, you've experienced that personally on a bunch of different contexts. And so the system kind of has antibodies and just rejects you. And so, you know, I think that the idea, the theory of change, and, you know, that, yeah.
Can you hear me? Because it says my connection's unstable. Sorry, guys.
You were freezing up a little bit, but I can hear you now.
Perfect. Okay. And you know what? We just have to take those moments and manage moment by moment, day by day. But I have to say, I've been kicked out of some better places. And I don't mind coming in and being the public offender, because you tried this diplomacy mentality for so long. Everyone says, be diplomatic. But, you know, diplomacy is the step before war, right?
Yeah.
You try, and then when you see that your diplomatic action is, for lack of better words, is no longer working or didn't work, then you have to position yourself to seize and marshal in what is best for your child, what is best for your family. I found out just by several mediations and conversations with OCR and parents, ain't nobody coming to save your kids.
No one's coming to our rescue.
Right. No one is going to value your children and family the way that you do.
Yeah.
A lot of people that are putting these things into place are far removed from the consequences of them, the impact of them, even the people of them, right?
Yeah.
And so they put them in the place as highly deodorized, aromatic things, and that's what I kind of call them, except for they're a little stinky to me. Hold your nose when you walk in the room, I heard someone say yesterday. Sitting in as placeholders. And, you know, our children are impacted by those decision-making processes where our authentic voices are not respected, where our authentic voices are not valued. And you cannot continue to have the same thought process, the same participatory role by saying, I'm just going to keep enrolling, and then expect to be respected. It doesn't happen. The two do not coexist. I will tell you that as a parent that has had to hire attorneys, okay, by the time my son and grandson were even in first grade, now they're in third, fourth, going to fourth. I will tell you that even that sometimes isn't respected. They will push back over the smallest things. And you know what it was? Because they didn't want to change the entire system to fit what was best for kids. So when I started talking about diabetic meal accommodations and how it was a serious thing, not just for my son, but for other children who could potentially have juvenile diabetes, but may not know it yet, and what to do and how to really get the Fruit Loops and the Swedish fish out of there, because that could be poison to these kids, right? I got fought over that. So, you know, I just really want to just encourage parents to continue to seek and do what's best for their children. And you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, Christina, the fight that you've had to fight, I think speaks to the urgency of now, in that, you know, the status quo is pretty good at pushing back against parents like you, who are smart and strategic, but it's a lonely fight, as you know. But there's not a big incentive structure for parents to rage against the machine. And so right now is a different moment. Right now, we are all collectively, as a society and as a country, going to be in the coming weeks and months sending our kids back to school and reopening these classrooms. And when that happens, we're going to have to make an affirmative decision. Are we going to just rebuild the status quo ante with all of its inequities and racism baked into that cake, but just 6 feet apart with masks? Or are we going to actually hit the reset button, seize this
Right.
moment to actually reimagine public education for the kids that everybody professes that they're in this for? I don't think that on the natural that's going to happen, given the kind of experiences that you've been just speaking about now and that you've lived. There's going to be a gravitational pull towards rebuilding the status quo. And I think that the solution, or at least part of the solution, is what you've been helping to lead, Christina, at the National Parents Union, which is establishing an education civil right,
Yes.
translating kids first from a soundbite into an actionable civil right, and giving parents my daughter Eloise wants to say hi.
Hi, Eloise.
Hello.
Have a great day.
There you go. So translating, kids first from a soundbite into an actionable civil right, and giving parents a seat at the table to advocate for the interests of kids in a real way. And you can do that by creating a legal right, or a civil right, or a constitutional right to a high quality public education.
Right.
So that parents would be able to say, no, 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 that law or that policy or that contract systemically harms kids. And since the purpose of public education is to serve kids, you can't do that. And I have a legal right to challenge you on that. Right now, as you know, parents can jump up and down during public comment, and school boards and state legislators and Congress people and senators can listen to them or not. But if education were actually a civil right, the way politicians have been talking about for generations,
Right.
that wouldn't be the case anymore. And I think this is the moment now to seize that opportunity to translate education into a civil right, and unrig the system and shift this paradigm once and for all, so that we can incentivize education, public education, to serve kids, not adults.
So first of all, I have to validate everything you're saying. Yes, yes, and yes. And second, I have to give a shout out to Nehemiah and Tafshir, who are in the comments saying hello to you, Ben, and they're totally agreeing. That's our MPU family. Shout out to them. And so I didn't want to miss the opportunity to say that. But here's the educational gospel truth, okay? I need you guys to catch this, parents, caretakers, families. They will wait you out, okay? With the understanding that our rights are limited. We do need an educational civil right, okay? That is absolute truth. In the meantime, what can you be doing while we're waiting to activate a right to say enough, right? I started this episode out by talking about steps that I had taken. And as I walked along and along and along and along, and it took me days, and that's okay, I perfected that, and I got to the goal that in the beginning looked so far away. When I was at only 10,000 steps, I was never anticipating I'm going to get to 330,000 steps tomorrow. But I kept putting one foot after the other every day, and saying, you know what? This is eventually going to happen, and I'm going to do the best that I can today to make sure that I'm an active participant in my ability to move forward. So I say all that to say, we can no longer wade by the river. I know that sounds hard, okay? And waiting for someone to say, get up and take a step across. We have to really move in a direction that shows power and authority in the hands of everyday parents. If they're failing your kid, pull them out. Don't say, but hey, where's the money and this and this and that? Look, there's other options, especially in this digital technological era, right? You have the world at your fingertips, like globally competitive education at your fingertips. So do not settle for what's less for your child. And I'm off that soapbox.
Well, yeah, I mean, we should find something at least to disagree on, Christina. Yeah, so to make this more interesting, but for me, this is about power, not policy. We can have a debate about the best policies for kids, and that debate will evolve as we all get collectively smarter about how to best put kids first. But I don't think the problem with our system is that people are conspiring to harm kids. It's just that the system's captured by interests that are more powerful than kids. And we need to, if you think about the history of other social movements that are successful, like civil rights movement, the women's rights, marriage equality, even, at least from my perspective, unfortunately, the gun rights movement, they all have a legal or a constitutional North Star that guides their organizing and their storytelling across elections and even generations. Our work in this movement has really been organized around technocratic stuff like school models and acronyms and studies, and there's just not a lot of history of social movements succeeding based on that. And so to your point about the metaphor about steps, like creating an education civil right is the first step, not the last step in a journey like that. But I think it's really, I loved the way you broke that down, because the system wants parents to feel powerless. They want parents to look at a journey like you just went on and think, that's too hard, or I can't do that, or I feel alone in this work, or I should leave it to the experts because they'll fix it for me. And it's just, we've tried that. And so, to your point, the first step in, a journey of 1,000 miles, is like, begins with one step. And, it sounds kind of crazy to say, let's go create a new civil right. And for the most part, the way civil rights like this are created are not the way the National Parents Union has been doing it. It's mostly created by elites behind closed doors. And so, for parents who are watching this, there is a moment in time and a real opportunity to engage with parent leaders like Christina and in the National Parents Union, and play a role in being part of the creation story for new civil right for your kids in your community.
So true. That is so true. And so, even though I get on this soapbox, I rinse off, right? And so and that's when you get the
know where
solution.
else this metaphor is going.
I just keep bringing those little cute statements all day. So, if you could just give parents something as far as one thing that they could do now, right? Schools have reopened. I showed that picture in the beginning. A lot of parents are still saying that they haven't heard, an appropriate amount of information. just really out there fighting the good fight. Parents, I admonish you to continue to speak up, continue to show up, continue to help other parents if you have the ability to understand what's going on with their child's education. If you see someone sinking in a chat room, because you can't really be gathering where you're not supposed to, then help that parent out, right? If you have the answer, help that parent out. I've watched these big group chats, and there is just parents asking basic questions like how to log in or something, how to do something. If you know how to do that, help that parent out. We have to have a collective tribal community mentality, because we're looking at how to benefit our children for the next generation. But if you have a word that you can give and share with those parents before we close, that would be great.
Yeah, I love what you said about the first step is just to recognize that we're all in this together. And, the civil right framework that the National Parents Union has crafted is it elevates specifically the interests of low-income children and children of color, but it's a civil right for all kids,
Right.
regardless of race, class, and ethnicity. And I think what you were speaking to was the fact that I think parents across all of these boundaries that have traditionally divided us have a whole lot more in common with each other when it comes to just putting all of our kids first. And there are differences. I mean, at my daughter's school, we need less money to educate kids than kids in Compton or Watts, but it doesn't mean that we don't need basically similar policies to just elevate the interests of all of our kids. I think it's important to recognize that when we're talking about this stuff, we're in a crazy moment here. And parents are being asked of parents than maybe ever in the history, at least in our lifetimes. We're going to need to walk and chew gum at the same time, but it doesn't mean that those different lanes are mutually exclusive.
Right.
And while parents don't have the kind of traditional power that teachers unions have, big education bureaucracies have, other big special interests have, we have our stories, and there is power in storytelling. There's
Yes.
power in individual stories, and there's power in our collective stories. And I think what the National Parents Union is doing is helping parents to organize and translate their stories into power, into the kind of seat of the table that's required to do things like create a new education civil right. And so I think what parents can do is recognize that, all of our first responsibilities is to make sure our children get the education they deserve. But to understand that the process of doing that creates power, and that the system has failed us, the status quo has failed us, the experts have failed us. It's now on us to figure out what that new North Star looks like, and to chart a path forward for our kids and for the future of American public education. So it's a scary moment, it's an overwhelming moment, but it's a moment of huge opportunity to actually hit the reset button and reimagine a fundamentally broken system for the kids of today and tomorrow.
And I totally agree. And I do want to say to my viewers, the deficit is not in us and our kids. Okay. I know that we have traditionally had that mentality that, the deficit's in us because we're doing something wrong, right? Or the deficit's in our kids, especially when you're living in like this meritocracy like type of situation. And you can do everything right and still be failed. Yeah. You're not failing, you're being failed. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's a difference. And I want you to recognize that. Thank you, Ben. How can people reach out to you if they would like more information or just, some other information that you're willing to share?
Yeah. My email is ben@kidscoalition.org. The Twitter handle is @kidscoalition. As you know, Christina, I'm honored to be working really closely with you and the National Parents Union on the Civil Rights Project. And so you can also contact the National Parents Union.
Yes, my email address is always going to be on my little show description, but just in case you missed it, Christina@npunion.org. We're always here, willing to serve you, the parents, families, caretakers, and children. We are with you, not, on the outside looking in. We're fighting a good fight with you. So I want you to just remain inspired and continue to take those steps forward. Thank you to all my viewers. If you would like to view other shows during the day, you can go to our Facebook page, National Parents Union on Facebook. There are shows that air every day, Monday through Friday, throughout the day, and I'm sure there's something for everyone. And so definitely check that out. You have been watching Managing Day to Day with me, Christina Laster, and National Parents Union. Thank you, Ben. I will see you soon. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all thriving. Goodbye to America's beautiful children. We love you as always. Be safe, be well, keep walking, and thrive. Goodbye.